The air was thick with tension at our family dinner table, a rare gathering that felt more like a battlefield than a homecoming. For years, I'd been the dutiful daughter funneling money to my parents to keep their lives afloat, college fees for my sister, car payments, even their mortgage. But that night, as my sister and her shady husband smirked across the table, my parents dropped a bombshell. "If you want to stay in the guest room, it's $5,000 a month now." The guest room. In the house I'd practically paid for. The betrayal stung deeper than the demand their favoritism toward my sister laid bare. I forced a smile, nodded, and said nothing but rage simmered beneath. That night I logged into the bank's website, my fingers trembling as I requested a freeze on every account tied to me, including the joint ones with my parents. I packed my bags in silence, left a note on the kitchen counter. "This is the last time I pay," and slipped out into the dark. I thought I'd cut them off for good. A week of eerie silence passed until my phone lit up with 110 missed calls from my mother. Her voicemails a chaotic spiral of panic accusations and pleas. "You can't do this to us," she screamed. But I wasn't done. What I uncovered next about my sister's husband, my parents' lies, and a secret they'd buried for years would unravel their world and set me free. My name is Ellen Harper, 38 years old, a financial analyst with a steady career in Richmond, Virginia. For years, I've been the backbone of my family, wiring money to my parents for their bills, my sister's education, even their home repairs, all while building my own life alone. Independence was my badge, but it came with a price I never spoke aloud until that night changed everything. The dining room smelled of roasted chicken and resentment, the kind that lingers in a family stretched thin by unspoken grudges. My parents' modest colonial home, tucked in a quiet Richmond suburb, hadn't changed much since my childhood. Same faded floral curtains, same creaky oak table where we now sat. My mother, Diane, 62, fussed over the mashed potatoes, her hands trembling slightly, not from age, but from the weight of whatever she was about to say. My father, Robert, 65, sat at the head, his weathered face stern, sipping his iced tea with deliberate slowness. Across from me was my younger sister, Lila, 32. Her new husband, Greg, glued to her side. Their arrival a month ago had shifted the house's rhythm, their laughter and whispers filling spaces I'd once called mine. I'd driven down from my apartment for this rare family dinner expecting warmth, but finding a chill I couldn't name. The meal started innocently enough. Mom passed the green beans, her eyes darting to Dad, who cleared his throat. "Ellen, we need to talk about arrangements," he said, his voice low, like he was delivering a verdict. I set down my fork, the clink loud in the sudden silence. Lila's gaze flicked to Greg, who smirked faintly, his arm draped over her chair. "What arrangements?" I asked, though my stomach already knotted, sensing the ambush. Dad leaned forward, his hands clasped. "With Lila and Greg, moving in space is tight. The guest room, you know where you stay when you visit, it's not free anymore." He paused, letting the words settle like dust. "If you want to keep using it, it'll be $5,000 a month." The number hit like a slap. $5,000. For a room in the house I'd poured thousands into over the years, mortgage payments when Dad's carpentry jobs dried up Lila's college tuition, when she flunked out of her first semester, even the new roof after that brutal storm in 19. I stared at him, waiting for a punchline that never came. Mom's voice broke the silence, thin and nervous. "It's only fair, Ellen. Lila and Greg are starting their life and we need to support them. You've got your job, your place, you're doing fine." Her words twisted the knife. Fine. I'd been more than fine for them wiring money month after month, never asking for thanks, never expecting this. Lila said nothing, her eyes fixed on her plate, but Greg's smirk widened like he'd won some game I didn't know we were playing. 5,000. I repeated, my voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. "For the guest room?" Dad nodded, unyielding. "It's a family home, Ellen, but times are tough. You want to stay, you contribute." Contribute. The word burned. I'd contributed more than anyone at this table. Yet here I was, reduced to a tenant in my own family's story. The room felt smaller, the air thick with old wounds cracking open. I remembered the summers I worked double shifts to cover Lila's car payments while she partied the Christmases I spent alone in my apartment so Mom could fuss over Lila's latest drama. They'd always chosen her, the baby, the fragile one, the one who could do no wrong. I'd swallowed it, told myself it was duty love. But this was a line drawn in the sand, and I was on the wrong side. I looked at Lila, hoping for a flicker of guilt, but she avoided my gaze, her fingers twirling a lock of hair. Greg leaned closer to her, whispering something that made her lips twitch. My parents exchanged a glance, a silent agreement I wasn't privy to. The favoritism wasn't new, but its brazenness tonight felt like a betrayal carved in stone. They weren't just asking for money, they were pushing me out, making room for Lila's new life while erasing mine. I could have argued, listed every dollar I'd given them, every sacrifice. But the words caught in my throat, drowned by a realization they didn't see me as family anymore, only a resource. The thought was a cold blade cutting through years of loyalty. I pushed my chair back, the scrape loud in the tense quiet. "I'll think about it," I said, my voice calm, betraying none of the storm inside. Mom's face softened, mistaking my restraint for compliance. "Good, Ellen. We just want what's best for everyone." Dad grunted, returning to his chicken. Lila finally looked up, her eyes unreadable, while Greg's smirk lingered like a challenge. I forced a smile, my mind racing, calculating. They thought they'd cornered me, but they'd misjudged. I wasn't the obedient daughter anymore. As we cleared the plates, their chatter resumed, Lila's new job, Greg's business plans, like nothing had happened. But something had shifted in me. A switch flipped. I excused myself, claiming a headache, and retreated to the guest room. Alone, I sat on the narrow bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper I'd paid to replace. $5,000. For a room. For a family that didn't want me. The anger hardened into resolve. They'd drawn the battle lines, but I wasn't going to fight on their terms. I nodded, smiled to myself, and began planning my exit from their lives. The guest room door clicked shut behind me, sealing out the hum of my family's voices from the dining room below. My forced smile from dinner had faded, replaced by a cold clarity that pulsed through me like a second heartbeat. My parents' demand, $5,000 a month for a room in a house I'd helped pay for, echoed in my mind, each word a fresh cut. I stood in the dim light, the familiar walls of my childhood closing in, and knew I couldn't stay. Not under their terms. Not anymore. I sank onto the bed, its springs creaking under my weight, and pulled my laptop from my bag. My fingers moved with purpose, logging into my bank's online portal. The screen glowed, casting shadows across the room's faded wallpaper. My account savings checking, and the joint ones I'd set up with Mom and Dad years ago to help manage their bills, stared back at me. Those joint accounts were my lifeline to them, a tether I'd willingly tied, thinking it was love. Now it felt like a noose. I navigated to the security settings, my heart pounding but steady. I'd been a financial analyst for over a decade. I knew how to protect assets. Suspected fraud, I typed into the freeze request form, my justification, both truth and weapon. Lila's husband Greg, with his smug grin at dinner, had set off alarms in my head. His business plans sounded too much like schemes. If they wanted to play hardball, I'd make sure they had nothing to play with. The process was simple but deliberate. I selected every account linked to my name, including the joint ones where Dad's carpentry income and Mom's pension checks mingled with my contributions. I'd been the primary on those accounts, a decision made in trust long ago when Dad's business faltered. The bank's system prompted for confirmation. "Are you sure you want to freeze these accounts? This action will restrict all access until resolved." I hesitated for a fraction of a second, picturing Mom's nervous hands, Dad's stern gaze, Lila's silence. Then I clicked confirm. A message flashed. Request submitted. Processing may take 24-48 hours. It was done. Their access to my money, my years of sacrifice, was cut off with a keystroke. I closed the laptop, the finality of it settling over me like a quiet storm. The room felt smaller now, less like a refuge and more like a relic of a life I no longer fit into. I stood moving to the closet where my overnight bag sat half unpacked from my drive down. Packing was methodical, almost meditative. I folded my clothes, jeans, blouses, a spare pair of sneakers, each item a step toward freedom. My toiletries went into a small pouch, my charger coiled neatly. I didn't rush. There was no need. The house was asleep, oblivious to the shift I was making. Every creak of the floorboards felt amplified, but I moved with care, avoiding the spots I knew squeaked from childhood games of sneaking downstairs. On the dresser, I spotted a framed photo from years ago, me, Lila, Mom, and Dad at a 4th of July picnic, all smiles under a blazing Virginia sun. I traced my finger over the glass, then turned it face down. That family was gone, replaced by strangers who saw me as a paycheck. I grabbed a notepad from the desk one Mom used for grocery lists and scrawled a message in sharp, deliberate strokes. "This is the last time I pay." The words were stark final, a line drawn in ink, as much as in my heart. I placed the note on the bed where they'd find it in the morning, a quiet declaration of my departure. With my bag slung over my shoulder, I crept downstairs, avoiding the dining room where the remnants of dinner still sat. The house was dark, save for the faint glow of a porch light seeping through the windows. I paused at the front door, my hand on the knob, listening to the silence. No footsteps. No voices, just the hum of the refrigerator and my own steady breathing. I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face, and locked the door behind me. My car waited in the driveway, a reliable sedan I'd bought outright years ago. I tossed my bag in the back, slid into the driver's seat, and drove off the house, shrinking in my rearview mirror until it was gone. The road to my apartment was a blur of streetlights and empty streets. I felt lighter with every mile, the weight of their expectations lifting. I'd done it, cut the cord, reclaimed my power. By the time I reached my place, an hour's drive away, the adrenaline had settled into a calm resolve. I thought it was over, a clean break from a family that had taken too much. I crawled into bed, the silence of my own space wrapping around me like a shield. But then, a week later, as I sat sipping coffee in my kitchen, my phone buzzed. Then again, and again. The screen lit up with notifications, one after another, relentless. I picked it up, my pulse quickening. Missed calls, 110 of them, all from Mom. Voicemails piled up, her voice a mix of panic and rage. Texts from Lila demanding I call back. I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold. I thought it was over. But the phone started ringing. The silence in my apartment was a fragile thing, a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. After slipping out of my parents' house that night, leaving behind the note that severed my role as their financial crutch, I'd spent the past week settling back into my own world. My Richmond apartment, with its tidy bookshelves and soft morning light filtering through the blinds, felt like a sanctuary. I was Ellen Harper, 38, a financial analyst who'd built a life of quiet stability, and for the first time I was choosing myself. The phone had stayed silent. No calls, no texts, nothing from Mom, Dad, or Lila. I thought I'd won, that my exit had been clean. I was wrong. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where I'd usually be crunching numbers for a client or savoring a slow coffee. I was halfway through my second cup, the steam curling up from the mug, when my phone buzzed on the counter. I ignored it at first, assuming it was a work email or a spam call. Then it buzzed again. And again. The screen lit up, a relentless cascade of notifications. I picked it up, my stomach tightening as I saw the name Mom. Call after call, one every few minutes, piling up like a storm gathering speed. By the time I scrolled through, there were 110 missed calls, all from her, stretching back to the early hours of the morning. My heart thudded, not with fear, but with a wary curiosity. What could possibly drive her to this? I tapped the voicemail icon, bracing myself. The first message played, Mom's voice high and frantic words tumbling over each other. "Ellen, how could you do this? The accounts, everything's frozen. We can't pay for anything. Call me back, please." The next was sharper, her tone edged with accusation. You think you can just cut us off? After all we've done. You're selfish, Ellen. Then another, softer, almost sobbing. Please, honey, we're in trouble. Just talk to me. The messages were a chaotic spiral swinging from pleas to blame to desperation, each one more unhinged than the last. I listened to a dozen before stopping my coffee, now cold, untouched. Her panic was palpable, but it wasn't about me, it was about the money, the lifeline I'd yanked away. I set the phone down, trying to process the onslaught. A week ago, they'd sat across from me at that dinner table demanding $5,000 for a room. I'd helped pay for their faces cold, Lila's husband Greg smirking like he'd orchestrated it all. I'd walked away thinking my silence would be enough to teach them a lesson. But this was something else. Mom's calls weren't about apologies or reconciliation. They were a scramble to claw back what they'd lost. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window at the quiet street below, my mind racing. What had happened in that house to spark this frenzy? As if on cue, a text buzzed through. It was Lila, her name flashing like a warning. You need to talk to me. Urgent. No greeting, no explanation, just a demand, as if I owed her anything after her silence at dinner. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to call, to hear her squirm, to demand why she'd let our parents turn on me. But another part, the one hardened by years of being their second choice, held back. Lila had never stood up for me, not when Mom excused her failures, not when Dad took her side in every argument. Why would she start now? I stood pacing the small kitchen, the phone still buzzing with another call from Mom. The voicemails had stopped making sense, her words a jumble of "we need you" and "you don't understand." I didn't listen to the rest. I didn't need to. The chaos in her voice told me everything they'd discovered, the frozen accounts and their carefully built world was crumbling without my money to prop it up. For years, I'd been the one to fix their problems. Dad's faltering business, Lila's endless mistakes while they took and took, never once asking about my life. Now they were feeling the consequences, and it was unraveling them. I stopped pacing, my reflection caught in the window. The woman staring back was tired, but resolute, no longer the daughter who'd nod and comply. I'd frozen those accounts not out of spite, but necessity, a line drawn to protect myself. Yet the flood of calls, the desperation in Mom's voice stirred something uneasy in me. What were they hiding? Why this panic, this urgency? I thought back to Greg's smirk, the way he'd leaned into Lila at dinner, whispering like they shared a secret. My gut twisted. This wasn't just about the money I'd cut off, it was bigger, messier. I sat down, the phone still in my hand, its screen now dark. The quiet of my apartment felt heavier now, the weight of their chaos seeping through the distance I'd tried to put between us. I'd thought walking away would end it, that my note would be the final word. But as the phone lit up again, another call from Mom, I realized the truth. They weren't calling for me. They were calling for the money. The buzz of my phone had become a distant hum, like a storm that had passed but left the air charged. After a week of dodging 110 missed calls from Mom and Lila's cryptic texts demanding I talk, I'd let the silence settle, hoping it would hold. My Richmond apartment was my fortress, its quiet corners a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind at my parents' house. But the urgency in Mom's voicemails, the edge in Lila's message, gnawed at me. They weren't reaching out to mend things, they were desperate for the money I'd locked away. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the dark screen of my phone, wondering what had sparked their panic. Something was off, and I needed answers. I was sipping tea, trying to focus on a work report, when my phone pinged with a new message. It wasn't Mom or Lila. This time it was Sarah, an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in years. Ellen, you free for coffee? Got something you need to hear. Her words were casual, but the timing felt too precise to be coincidence. I replied, setting a meetup at a small cafe downtown, my curiosity outweighing my hesitation. Sarah had known me back when I was younger, less guarded before I'd learned to carry my family's burdens. If anyone had insight into this mess, it might be her. The cafe was cozy, tucked between a bookstore and a bakery, its warm lights a faint comfort against the gray October afternoon. Sarah was already there, her auburn hair pulled back, her smile warm, but tinged with something serious. We hugged, exchanged quick pleasantries, but her eyes kept darting to mine like she was weighing what to say. "Ellen," she started stirring her latte. "I saw your sister with her new husband at a fundraiser last week." "Greg." "Right." I nodded, my stomach tightening at his name. That smirk from the dinner table flashed in my mind, his arm around Lila like he owned the room. "What about him?" I asked, keeping my voice even. Sarah leaned closer, her voice low. "I recognized him, Ellen. From college. He was Greg Thornton, your boyfriend, junior year, wasn't he?" The words hit like a punch. I froze my coffee cup halfway to my lips. Greg Thornton. I dated him briefly at UVA, charmed by his confidence until I caught him lying about his finances, hinting at investments that sounded like scams. I'd broken it off uneasy about his motives, and he'd vanished from my life. Or so I thought. "He's married to Lila now," Sarah continued, but I dug a little. "He's gone bankrupt twice, once in '09, again in '15. There was even a fraud investigation tied to his last business, something about falsified loans. Cops never pinned him, but the rumors stuck." My mind reeled, piecing together the past and present. Greg, my ex now. Lila's husband. The realization was a cold wave washing over me. Had he targeted Lila to get back at me? Or worse, to get to the family's money, my money? I thought of the joint accounts I'd frozen, the ones I'd set up to help Mom and Dad. Greg had been at that dinner, whispering to Lila, smirking as Dad demanded $5,000 for the guest room. Was he pulling the strings, using my parents as pawns in some new scheme? "Are you sure it's him?" I asked, though I already knew. Sarah nodded, pulling out her phone to show me a photo from the fundraiser. There he was, older but unmistakably Greg, his arm around Lila, that same calculated charm in his eyes. I thanked Sarah, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Back in my apartment, I paced, the weight of her words sinking in. Greg wasn't just a con artist, he was personal. He'd wormed his way into my family, likely banking on my history of bailing them out. But had Mom and Dad known about his past? Were they clueless, or were they playing along, blinded by their favoritism for Lila? The thought made my skin crawl. I remembered the joint accounts, the ones I'd frozen just in time. But what if Greg had accessed them before? What if he'd already siphoned something off using Lila or my parents as cover? I stopped pacing, my gaze landing on a box in the corner of my living room. It held old keepsakes from college photos, letters, journals. I'd written about Greg back then, scribbling my suspicions when I ended things. If there was proof of his patterns, his lies, it might be there. I knelt beside the box, my hands trembling as I lifted the lid. The journals were buried under faded yearbooks, their pages yellowed but intact. I hadn't opened them in years, but now they felt like a map to the truth. I needed evidence, and I knew where to find it in my old journals. The dust from the old journals still clung to my fingers as I closed the box, the weight of Greg's past, my past, settling over me like a fog. Learning. He was Lila's husband. The same man I'd rejected years ago for his shady dealings had turned my suspicion into certainty. He was no innocent addition to our family. But the journals would have to wait. My apartment, usually a haven, felt restless now, the air heavy with questions about how deep this betrayal ran. Did Mom and Dad know who Greg was? Were they pawns in his game? Or had they chosen to look the other way as they always did for Lila? I pushed the box back into the corner, my mind drifting to the years I'd spent carrying them all a role. I'd never questioned until that dinner changed everything. I sank onto my couch, the soft leather cool against my skin, and let my thoughts slip back to the past. It was 2007, and I was 20 working late shifts at a diner to cover Lila's first semester at community college. She'd failed 3 classes partying instead of studying, but Mom had brushed it off. "She's young, Ellen," she'd said, her voice soft with indulgence. "She'll find her way." I'd nodded, swallowing my frustration, and wired the tuition payment from my savings. Dad hadn't said much, just patted Lila's shoulder at dinner, his pride reserved for her, never me. I was the reliable one, the one who didn't need coddling, so I got none. By 25, I was a financial analyst, my career climbing, but my paycheck wasn't just mine. It went to Lila's car, a shiny red convertible she crashed twice because Dad said she needed something to boost her confidence. I paid for it, no questions asked, because that's what family did right. The memories stung, each one a reminder of how I'd been molded into their safety net. In 2015, when a storm tore through Richmond, the roof of our family home leaked like a sieve. Dad's carpentry business was barely scraping by, so I covered the $12,000 for repairs, dipping into my savings again. Mom had hugged me, tears in her eyes, but never mentioned it after. Lila, meanwhile, had moved into a fancy apartment she couldn't afford, and when she fell behind on rent, I got the call. Just this once, Ellen, Mom pleaded. It was never once. Over the years, I'd funneled thousands into their lives, electric bills, medical co-pays, even Dad's new truck when his old one died. I never kept a tally, but the weight of it sat on my shoulders, heavy and unspoken. They called me dependable, responsible, but never thanked me. I was their mobile bank, always open, always giving. I stood pacing the hardwood floor of my apartment, the city lights flickering outside. Those years of sacrifice had built a house of cards, and that dinner, Dad's cold demand for $5,000 a month. Mom's nervous justification. Lila's silence had toppled it. I saw it clearly now. They'd never valued me, only what I could provide. Lila's failures were cushioned, her mistakes erased, while I was expected to keep giving, keep fixing. I remembered her high school graduation, how Mom had beamed when Lila barely passed, throwing her a lavish party I quietly funded. My own graduation, top of my class, got a card and a "Good job, Ellen." I'd told myself it didn't matter, that love wasn't a competition, but it was, and I'd lost every round. This time, though, I was done. The frozen accounts were my first stand, a refusal to let them bleed me dry. I thought of Greg, his bankruptcies and fraud investigation, now married to Lila, living in the home I'd helped maintain. Had he known about my contributions? Was that why he'd targeted Lila, to get to the family's money? My money. The thought made my chest tighten, but it also steeled me. I wasn't the sister who'd cover Lila's rent anymore, or the daughter who'd nod and pay for a roof over their heads. I was done being their ATM, their fallback plan. I stopped pacing, my reflection caught in the dark window. The woman staring back was no longer the Ellen who'd sat quietly at that dinner table, swallowing her hurt. I'd spent years playing the good child, the one who never complained, who carried the family's burdens without a word. But that Ellen was gone. Freezing those accounts wasn't just about protecting myself, it was a declaration. They'd underestimated me, assumed I'd cave under their pressure. They were wrong. I sat back down, my tea long cold, and felt a shift inside me. The silence of the past week, broken by Mom's frantic calls and Lila's urgent text, wasn't about love or regret. It was about their world unraveling without my money to hold it together. They weren't reaching out to me, they were scrambling to save themselves. And for the first time, I saw my power. I wasn't their savior anymore. I'm no longer the good child. I'm a threat to them. The realization that I was no longer my family's dutiful daughter, but a threat to their fragile world, lingered like a shadow as I sat in my Richmond apartment. The journals from college where I'd recorded my suspicions about Greg sat unopened in their box, a task I hadn't yet faced. My refusal to be their mobile bank had shifted something fundamental, but the weight of Mom's 110 missed calls and Lila's urgent texts still pressed against me. I'd frozen the accounts to protect myself, but the silence that followed felt too quiet, like the calm before a storm I couldn't yet see. I was about to brew another pot of coffee, hoping to clear my head, when my phone pinged with an email notification that stopped me cold. The subject line read, Urgent suspicious activity on your accounts. It was from my bank, the same one managing the joint accounts I'd locked down. My pulse quickened as I opened it, the words blurring for a moment before I focused. Dear Ms. Harper, it began. We've detected an attempt to reopen your frozen accounts using documents that could not be verified. Additionally, unusual transfer requests were made to an external entity, Thornton Enterprises, LLC. Please contact us immediately to discuss. Thornton Enterprises. Greg's company, no doubt the business plans he'd bragged about at dinner, his smirk flashing in my memory. Someone had tried to access my money, and they'd used fake documents to do it. My hands trembled as I read on the email detailing dates and times of the attempts, all within the past 2 days. The audacity of it burned through me, but it was the next line that made my breath catch. I called the bank, my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. A customer service representative, Karen, answered, her tone professional but urgent. Ms. Harper, we flagged the activity because the documents, a driver's license, and a signed authorization didn't match our records, she said. The signature was close, but it failed our verification. And the person who presented them? She hesitated, her voice dropping. The branch manager noted they resembled you oddly. Same build, similar features. We're concerned it might be an impersonation attempt. My mind raced, picturing Lila, her face so like mine, but softer, younger. Could she have done this? Or was it someone else? Someone Greg had roped in. The idea of someone pretending to be me walking into a bank to steal what I'd fought to protect sent a chill down my spine. I need to see the security footage. I said, my tone firm. Can you arrange that? Karen paused, then agreed to escalate my request. It'll take a day or two to pull the footage from the branch, she said. We'll need you to come in person to review it given the sensitivity. In the meantime, the accounts remain frozen and we've blocked further attempts. But Ms. Harper. The transfers to Thornton Enterprises were significant, tens of thousands requested before we caught it. My stomach dropped. Tens of thousands. My savings, my years of sacrifice nearly siphoned off to Greg's shady company. I thanked her, hung up, and sat staring at the email, my mind spinning. Greg's past bankruptcies, of fraud investigations, suddenly felt closer, more dangerous. Had he planned this all along, marrying Lila to get to me? Or were my parents in on it, their favoritism blinding them to his schemes? I stood pacing the hardwood floor of my apartment, the city's evening lights glinting outside. The bank's warning was a legal lifeline, proof that someone had crossed a line into criminal territory. Forging documents was no small thing under federal law. It could mean jail time. As a financial analyst, I knew the stakes: identity theft, fraud, unauthorized transfers. If I could get that footage, I'd have evidence, something to hold over them. But the idea of someone mimicking me using my name, my face twisted my anger into something sharper. I thought of Lila's text, "You need to talk to me. Urgent." And wondered if she'd known what Greg was doing. Had she stood by silent again as she had at dinner? Or was she deeper in this than I'd imagined? I stopped by the window, my reflection faint against the glass. The bank's call had turned my quiet rebellion into something bigger, a battle I hadn't anticipated. I'd frozen the accounts to draw a line, but now I was entangled in a web of deceit that felt personal, calculated. I emailed Karen back, confirming I'd come to the branch to review the footage. My hands were steady now, fueled by a resolve I hadn't felt before. I wasn't just protecting my money anymore, I was uncovering a truth that could unravel everything. The next day, I drove to the bank, my heart pounding as I signed in and waited. When the manager handed me a tablet with the security footage loaded, I pressed play, bracing myself. The grainy image flickered and a figure stepped into view. When I saw that face, I nearly dropped the phone. The bank manager's office felt sterile, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as I gripped the tablet, my breath shallow. The security footage from the branch where the impersonation happened loaded slowly, the grainy black and white image flickering to life. I had nearly dropped the phone when the manager described the resemblance, but now, watching the video play out, my world tilted. The figure on screen wasn't Lila as I'd feared, it was Greg, my sister's husband, my ex from college, stepping up to the counter with a confidence that made my blood run cold. He was dressed in a crisp shirt, his hair slicked back, but it was him, no doubt. The timestamp matched the bank's notification 2 days ago, right after I'd frozen the accounts. I leaned closer, my fingers white-knuckled on the device. The teller greeted him and Greg slid a folder across the counter, fake documents, the forged driver's license and authorization form. He spoke in a low voice mimicking what must have been an attempt at mine, higher-pitched with a Virginia lilt I'd honed over years. "I'm Ellen Harper." He said the words distorted but clear enough through the audio. "I need to unfreeze these accounts and approve some transfers." My stomach churned as he signed my name on the form, his hand steady looping the letters in a close approximation of my signature. It was sloppy, but from a distance it could fool someone rushed. The teller nodded, typing into her computer, oblivious to the fraud unfolding. But it was what happened next that shattered me. As Greg leaned on the counter waiting, 2 figures moved into frame behind him, Mom and Dad. They stood a few feet back near the ATM machines, their faces visible in the wide-angle shot. Dad's arms were crossed, his expression neutral. But Mom, she was smiling faintly. A small, satisfied curve to her lips that I'd seen when Lila got her way. Greg glanced back at them, and Mom stepped closer, whispering something in his ear, her hand on his shoulder. Complicit, encouraging. I couldn't hear the words, but her body language screamed involvement. They weren't bystanders. They were part of it, watching their son-in-law forge my identity, smiling as if it were a family outing. The shock hit like a wave, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. How could they? After years of my support, this was their thanks, betraying me for Lila and Greg's schemes. I paused the video, replaying the whisper, the smile over and over. The evidence was irrefutable, a clear record of fraud in action. Greg's forgery was blatant, a federal crime that could land him in prison. But Mom and Dad's presence turned it into something worse, a family conspiracy. I thought of Mom's frantic voicemails, her pleas laced with panic. Now I saw them for what they were, fear of getting caught. Dad's silence, his stern demands at dinner, they weren't about fairness. They were about control, about squeezing me out to make room for Greg's plans. The unusual transfers the bank mentioned to Thornton Enterprises, Greg's company, must have been the goal, siphoning my money to bail out his latest failure. And my parents stood there enabling it all. The manager cleared his throat, breaking my trance. "We can provide a copy for your records," he said, his voice sympathetic. "This looks serious, possible identity theft." I nodded, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Yes, please, I'll need it for my lawyer." He transferred the file to a USB drive and I slipped it into my purse, the small device heavy with the power it held. Back in my car, parked in the bank's lot, I plugged the drive into my laptop and saved the video to my secure cloud storage. My fingers flew over the keys, attaching it to an email from my private lawyer, Rebecca, a sharp attorney I'd consulted once for estate planning. "Rebecca, I wrote urgent evidence of fraud involving my family. Please review and advise on next steps." I hit send, the message whooshing away, sealing the first step toward justice. Driving home, the Richmond streets blurred past, but my mind was sharp, replaying the footage in my head. Greg's forged signature, his mimicked voice. It was clumsy, but calculated, a desperate grab for what wasn't his. Mom's whispered, Dad's silent approval. They'd crossed a line I never thought possible. The shock of it all settled into a cold determination. This video wasn't just evidence. It was my weapon proof that could expose their deceit. I pulled into my apartment complex, the familiar building a brief comfort. Inside, I watched the video one more time, pausing on Mom's smile, her whisper to Greg. It hurt deep and raw, but it also freed me. They thought they could use me, discard me. Now, with this in my hands, I held their fate. Now I can destroy them with just one click. The weight of that USB drive in my purse felt like a loaded gun as I stepped into my apartment, the door clicking shut behind me with finality. I'd sent the video to Rebecca, my lawyer, and the power of knowing I could expose my family's fraud with one click settled into a steely resolve. But as I poured myself a glass of water, trying to steady my shaking hands, my phone rang again. Not the frantic tone of Mom's calls, but a number I recognized from church. It was Mrs. Jenkins, the coordinator of the women's Bible study group I'd attended sporadically over the years. "Ellen, dear," she said, her voice hushed and urgent. "I heard something terrible about your family at prayer circle this morning. Is it true?" My heart skipped. How could word have spread so fast? I mumbled a vague response and hung up. But before I could process it, texts flooded in from neighbors, old classmates, even the church secretary. The Richmond community, tight-knit and quick to talk, was buzzing with whispers about the Harpers. I sank onto my couch, scrolling through the messages, each one a thread pulling the scandal beyond our dining room table. Mrs. Jenkins wrote, "Heard at coffee hour your parents caught trying to steal from you. Prayer group is praying for you. Ellen." Then came a text from Marjorie, my former neighbor on Maple Street. "Whole blocks talking. Greg Thornton at the bank. Your mama's beside herself." The women's group chat. I'd been removed from years ago, somehow looped me back in, pinging with speculation. Diane Harper's son-in-law forged papers. Poor Ellen, always the good one. Even the church newsletter email arrived, a special prayer request for the Harper family facing financial trials and broken trust. I stared at the screen, stunned. The incident at the bank, the forgery, the impersonation had leaked into every corner of our suburban world. Richmond wasn't New York. Secrets traveled faster than Sunday potlucks. By noon, my doorman's wife texted, "Everyone at the market knows. Your sister's husband a crook." The gossip wove through the community like wildfire, each group adding its own spin. At the First Baptist Church, where Mom had been a fixture for decades, the prayer group dissected it over lemon bars. I could picture them in the fellowship hall, heads bent close. Diane always favored Lila, but this, stealing from her own daughter. The women's auxiliary, where Mom volunteered for bake sales, buzzed with outrage. Greg Thornton, remember his last bankruptcy? Now using Ellen's good name. Neighbors on our old street formed a group text chain titled Harper House Drama, sharing blurry photos of cop cars supposedly parked outside Mom and Dad's, though I doubted that was true. The local Facebook group, Richmond Moms and Neighbors, exploded with 200 comments. Heard Ellen froze the accounts, good for her, Diane's losing face fast. The whispers weren't just talk. They were reshaping reputations, turning my private pain into public spectacle. My phone rang again, this time Mom's number, and I answered, bracing myself. Her sobs came through before words, raw and broken. "Ellen, oh honey, you have to fix this. I'm losing face with the prayer group. They're all staring at me in church." Mrs. Jenkins pulled me aside after service, whispering about family betrayal. "I can't show my face at Wednesday Bible study." Her voice cracked, mucus thick in her throat. "The ladies who I've baked pies for 20 years, they're calling me a liar, saying I raised a thief, and Lila's crying, saying the neighbors won't even wave anymore." I listened silent as she poured out her humiliation. No apology for the forgery, no regret for standing behind Greg, just panic over her social standing. "Please, Ellen, call off whatever you did. They're saying Greg's a criminal, that we're all in on it. I can't bear it. The prayer chain's praying for our moral collapse." She wept harder, and I hung up my chest tight. Her world, built on church smiles and neighborhood nods, was crumbling, not from guilt, but from gossip. I stood pacing to shake off the suffocation when a sharp knock sounded at my door. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in a neat blazer, microphone in hand, notepad poised. "Ellen Harper, I'm Claire Daniels from the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Just a few questions about the bank fraud involving your family." My breath caught. A reporter. The story had jumped from whispers to headlines. I cracked the door, keeping the chain on. "How did you find me?" She smiled professionally. "Community sources. The church mentioned you as the victim, very sympathetic angle. Your parents' involvement, the forgery, it's blowing up. Can you confirm the video evidence?" I shut the door, heart pounding, and leaned against it. Claire knocked again, calling softly, Ellen, the public's on your side. One quote could clear your name. But I stayed silent, sliding to the floor, the weight of exposure crashing down. The afternoon blurred into evening, more texts pouring in support from old friends, pity from acquaintances. The community I'd quietly helped through charity drives now rallied around me, their outrage aimed at Mom, Dad, Lila, and Greg. But as I scrolled through the Facebook posts, one detail chilled me. Several mentioned the security video circulating online. Screenshots showed grainy stills of Greg at the bank counter, Mom's faint smile visible behind him. Comments raged, caught red-handed #justice for Ellen. I opened my laptop searching Harper Bank fraud, and there it was, a blog post with the full clip timestamped yesterday. My stomach dropped. I'd only sent it to Rebecca. No one else. The video was out weaponized by strangers tearing through Richmond like Judgment Day. I didn't share that video. So who did? The question of who leaked the bank video haunted me as I sat on my apartment floor, the reporter's knocks fading into the evening hum of Richmond traffic outside. But before I could even search for answers, my phone rang. Rebecca, my lawyer, her voice cutting through the chaos with professional urgency. Ellen, we need to meet. Now. I've reviewed the video and there's more. Bring any property documents you have. Her tone carried a weight that pulled me from my stunned silence. I grabbed my purse, the USB drive still inside, and drove to her office downtown, the city lights blurring past as my mind raced. Whoever shared that footage had thrust my family's betrayal into the spotlight, but Rebecca's call suggested the wounds ran deeper than fraud, straight to the heart of what I'd thought was mine. Rebecca's law office was a quiet sanctuary on the 10th floor, all polished wood and leather-bound books that smelled of old money and new justice. She greeted me with a firm handshake, her gray-streaked hair pulled back, eyes sharp behind her glasses. Sit, she said, sliding a thick file across her desk. The video is damning federal fraud charges against Greg, possible conspiracy for your parents. But while digging into your financial history for the case, I found something worse. She opened the file, revealing a deed recorded 5 years ago, October 12, 2019 to be exact. The property address was unmistakable, 1427 Maple Street, my parents' colonial home. But the grantee wasn't Robert and Diane Harper. It was Lila Marie Harper. They transferred full ownership to your sister, Rebecca said flatly. Quitclaim deed, no mortgage liens. It's been hers since the storm repairs you funded. My breath caught the room spinning as I scanned the document. 5 years ago, that was right after I'd wired the $12,000 for the new roof, the one I'd paid for when Dad's business tanked. I'd visited that weekend, seen Mom fussing over the fresh shingles, Dad shaking my hand with rare warmth. Family asset protection. He'd called it vaguely when I asked about paperwork. I'd trusted them, never dreaming they were signing away the house I'd helped buy in 2005 with my signing bonus, the one where I'd grown up. Rebecca tapped the page. And here's the kicker, for 5 years they've been collecting your monthly repair contributions, $800 a month per your bank records, straight into their personal account. Not Lila's. They pocketed $48,000 while she owned the deed. The betrayal landed like a physical blow, my hands trembling on the paper. Every check I'd written, every automatic transfer for maintenance, had lined their pockets, not protected family equity. I leaned back, the leather chair creaking under me as memories flooded in sharp relief. For 5 years, I'd sent that money faithfully, $800 in February 2020, for the HVAC system. I researched myself, $800 in July 2021 for the fence after Lila's dog tore it down. Mom would call voice sweet, just a little help, Ellen keeps the old place standing. I'd never asked for receipts, never visited to verify. Trust. That was the currency I'd spent most freely, and they'd cashed it all in. Rebecca watched me, her expression softening slightly. This isn't just unethical, Ellen. It's conversion, taking your money under false pretenses. And with the deed transfer, you may have a claim for unjust enrichment. They benefited from your contributions while concealing ownership. Her words were legal precision, but they sliced through years of illusion. The house wasn't ours, it was Lila's castle built on my labor while I was relegated to paying tenant for a guest room. Why? I whispered more to myself than Rebecca. She shrugged. Tax reasons, maybe protecting assets from Dad's business debts. Or favoritism ensuring Lila's security. But the deception. That's malice. We spent the next hour mapping my case, tracing every transfer, valuing my total contributions, over $75,000 in home-related payments alone. You can sue for restitution, she said, outlining constructive trust theory. Force them to repay every cent plus interest. And with the fraud video, we bundle it civil suit for assets, criminal referral for the forgery. I nodded, my shock hardening into strategy. This wasn't about the house anymore. It was about reclaiming what I'd built piece by piece. Rebecca drafted the demand letter on the spot, her pen scratching decisively. Cease all false representations. Full accounting required within 10 days. Driving home through Richmond's quiet streets, the deed burned in my mind like a brand. 5 years of lies, every family holiday in their home now tainted. I'd slept in that guest room last month, oblivious that Lila owned the roof over my head. The monthly emails, "Thanks for the repair help, love Mom," mocked me now, their deception calculated cold. But as Rebecca's words echoed unjust enrichment restitution, I felt a spark of power. They thought they'd outmaneuvered me, transferring assets while keeping my wallet open. Wrong. I pulled into my parking spot, the city skyline twinkling indifferently. This betrayal made the fraud video look like a footnote. They'd stolen more than money, they'd erased my place in the family legacy. Inside my apartment, I spread the documents on my table, the quitclaim deed glaring up at me. No mention of me, Ellen Harper, eldest daughter, co-contributor. Just Lila's name, bold and final. The realization settled heavy but clarifying. I didn't lose inheritance because I was never named. The quitclaim deed lay spread across my kitchen table like a death certificate for the family. I thought I knew its stark words, confirming I had no claim to the home I'd helped sustain for decades. Rebecca's demand letter sat beside it, ready to launch my fight for restitution. But as midnight approached and Richmond's skyline glowed beyond my window, exhaustion pulled me toward bed. I cleared the papers, double-checked my locks. Paranoia from the video leak still fresh, and collapsed into sleep, dreaming of shadows whispering my name. The next morning, a sharp knock jolted me awake earlier than any delivery I'd expect. Through the peephole, I saw my doorman holding a plain brown parcel no bigger than a shoebox addressed simply to Ellen Harper in neat block letters. No return address, no postage stamp, just my name as if hand-delivered in the night. Curiosity overrode caution as I signed for it, the box surprisingly light in my hands. Back inside, I set it on the counter, studying the plain craft paper wrapped tightly with twine, a faint musty scent escaping the seams. Who would send this now, anonymously, when my life was unraveling? My pulse quickened, a chill tracing my spine. Not fear exactly, but an eerie sense that someone watched from the edges of my story. I fetched scissors from the drawer, the metal cold against my palm, and sliced through the twine. The paper fell away, revealing a plain cardboard box sealed with old-fashioned wax, the kind from estate sales. I lifted the lid slowly, and a wave of nostalgia hit me, mingled with something unsettling, like opening a time capsule laced with malice. Inside lay a treasure trove from my childhood, meticulously arranged, a stack of yellowed photos from the 90s, my elementary school report cards with gold stars, a faded blue ribbon from the science fair I'd won in 4th grade. There were my childhood awards, spelling B certificate, perfect attendance plaque. Even the locket Grandma gave me for my 10th birthday, its chain tangled but intact. Each item was a piece of the good daughter I'd been, the Ellen who excelled to earn approval. But beneath them, tucked in a yellowed envelope, was a single note, handwritten in elegant cursive that didn't match Mom or Dad's scrawl. You were just a financial plan. The words landed like ice water, my breath catching as I reread them, the paper crisp despite its age. A financial plan. Not a beloved child, but a strategy. A means to an end. My hands shook as I sifted deeper, pulling out more photos, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. But one stopped me cold. It was dated October 15th, 2019, the same day as the quitclaim deed Rebecca uncovered. There I was, smiling innocently in the background, helping Dad carry paint cans for house touch-ups. But in the foreground, Lila stood in the kitchen no older than 27, holding a document. Triumphantly a photocopy of the deed, her name circled in red marker, Mom and Dad beaming beside her. The photo's timestamp matched exactly. They'd celebrated transferring the house to her while I slaved over repair estimates. But it was the inscription on the back in that same eerie cursive, Lila inherits all Aunt Margaret's fortune secured through adoption. Adoption. My mind reeled pieces snapping together like a puzzle from hell. I dropped to the floor, photos scattering around me, and grabbed my laptop. A frantic search. Harper Family Adoption Records Richmond yielded nothing public, but a deeper dive into genealogy sites revealed a death notice from 1992. Margaret Ellis. Wealthy aunt on mom's side, childless widow worth $2.8 million in estate assets. The obituary mentioned adopted niece, Lila Marie, age newborn. Placed with Diane and Robert Harper after Margaret's brief marriage ended in tragedy. Lila wasn't my blood sister. She was adopted, chosen to inherit Aunt Margaret's fortune, the money that funded her easy life while I earned every cent. The note's words burned a financial plan. They'd raised me as the reliable earner, the mobile bank, to support the golden child they'd imported for wealth. Grandma's stories of family blessings suddenly twisted Margaret's money was the blessing funneled through Lila. The eerie weight of the package settled over me, each childhood memento now poisoned. That science fair ribbon won to impress teachers, padding my college apps for scholarships they never needed. The locket. A prop for photos proving happy family to social services during Lila's adoption. I rocked back, tears blurring the deed photo, Lila's smug grin mocking me. Someone had curated this, dug through attic scoured records to deliver truth at my darkest hour. But who, a family friend disillusioned by their greed? Dad's old partner nursing a grudge. The anonymity amplified the psychological chill like a ghost from my past, haunting with cold precision. Hours passed as I sat amid the debris, piecing together 2 decades of manipulation. They'd planned my role from my birth workhorse to the heiress transferring assets while pocketing my repairs. The package wasn't just evidence. It was psychological warfare, cracking open wounds I'd bandaged with duty. Yet in its creepiness lay power, undeniable proof of long-term deceit. I gathered the items carefully, photographing each for Rebecca, the notes cursive, a signature of some unseen ally or enemy. As dusk fell, the apartment felt watched, the box's emptiness staring back like an open grave. They didn't just betray me recently. They'd planned it for years. The eerie silence of my apartment, after unpacking that mysterious package, felt like the eye of a hurricane. The scattered childhood photos and that damning note. You were just a financial plan, staring up at me from the floor like evidence in a murder trial. Years of calculated betrayal laid bare Lila's adoption for wealth. The deed transfer celebration. I couldn't just sit with this knowledge anymore. It burned, too hot, demanded action. As dawn broke over Richmond, painting my walls gold, I made my decision. No more waiting for Rebecca's measured legal steps. The truth needed air, needed to explode into the light where my family couldn't hide. I opened my laptop, the bank video file glowing on my desktop, and created a burner email account, justiceharper@gmail.com. No trace back to me. With steady hands, I attached the footage. The clearest 30-second clip of Greg forging my signature, Mom whispering approval. Dad standing sentinel, and typed a single line to the Richmond Times-Dispatch city desk. Family fraud exposed. Publish for the victim. Hit send. The whoosh echoed like a gunshot. The climax had begun. By mid-morning, my phone erupted not with mom's sobs, but notifications from every corner of my digital life. The Times-Dispatch website crashed their servers with traffic. Shocking bank fraud, local woman victimized by own family in identity theft scheme. The video embedded crystal clear had 50,000 views in an hour. Comments flooded, Diane Harper from church unbelievable. Ellen Harper's a saint, always helping now this betrayal. The story ricocheted across local news. WRIC Channel 8 ran it at noon. WVEC in Norfolk picked it up by 1. Even the Washington Post tweeted a teaser, Virginia family fraud goes viral. But the real hammer fell at 2:17 p.m., a press release from Thornton Enterprises, Greg's company. Effective immediately, Gregory Thornton is terminated for gross ethical violations, following credible evidence of criminal activity. We do not tolerate fraud. I stared at the screen, my coffee spilling untouched. Fired. His business plans, the transfers he'd tried to steal, gone in a corporate heartbeat. The man who'd smirked at our dinner table, my ex-turned-predator, was unemployed, exposed. The community's backlash hit like a tidal wave, sweeping my family into isolation. First Baptist Church posted, Prayer group heartbroken. Diane Harper steps down from women's ministry amid scandal. The Richmond Moms and Neighbors Facebook group, 15,000 strong, erupted. Boycott Harper home. Greg Thornton's a predator. Neighbors who'd waved at mom for decades now shared screenshots of her old bake sale posts with red X's, thief in an apron. The Women's Auxiliary expelled her via email. Your actions shame our sisterhood. Even the local grocery sent a polite note. We're sorry for your family's distress. Ellen, free coffee on us anytime. Texts poured in from faces I'd forgotten, high school friends, former coworkers. Saw the news. You're brave. We believe you. The tide had turned not just against them but toward me, a groundswell of support washing away years of invisibility. Mrs. Jenkins from church called Ellen's the real victim, let's organize a fund for her legal fees. By evening, a GoFundMe launched, Justice for Ellen Harper hit $8,000 in hours. But Greg wasn't done fighting dirty. At 6:45 p.m., my notifications exploded again, his Facebook post shared to every local group. Lies. Ellen Harper set me up out of jealousy. She's unstable. Always has been. Forged videos sue her. He attached blurry selfies proving his innocence, tagging Mom and Lila, calling me bitter spinster. For 10 agonizing minutes, doubt flickered had I gone too far. Then the backlash flipped like a switch. The community, already raging, turned on him threefold. Greg Thornton caught on camera, you liar. 2,000 comments in minutes. Richmond Mom's moderator banned him. Slander against a victim. You're done here. The Times-Dispatch updated, Thornton doubles down, social media attack, backfires spectacularly. Support rallied harder for me. Church ladies baked casseroles for delivery, neighbors formed a Protect Ellen watch group. A viral TikTok from a local influencer, Women of Richmond stand with Ellen #Harper fraud, #sisterhood strong, racked up 100,000 views. Greg's post got ratioed into oblivion. His profile suspended by morning. The counterattack didn't just fail, it amplified my truth, turning whispers into a roar. I watched it all unfold from my couch, a glass of wine in hand, the city's lights twinkling like applause. The exposure wasn't revenge, it was revelation. The full truth detonating publicly, stripping my family's masks. Greg fired Mom, shunned Dad's name mud. Years of my silent sacrifices now currency in the court of community opinion. Texts from Sarah, my college friend. You did it, Ellen. They're done. Even Rebecca emailed, perfect timing strengthens our suit tenfold. The GoFundMe hit $25,000 by midnight strangers writing, for the daughter they forgot. I felt seen, validated, powerful in a way I'd never known. The climax wasn't destruction. It was my emergence, phoenix-like from their ashes. But as the clock struck 1 a.m., a sharp pounding shattered the night's triumph. Through the peephole, my heart stopped Mom, Dad, and Lila on my doorstep, faces twisted in fury and desperation. They showed up at my door, all three, no warning. The pounding at my door grew frantic, a drumbeat of desperation that shattered the fragile peace I'd found in the wake of the public exposure. My heart hammered as I unchained the lock, pulling it open to face Mom, Dad, and Lila on my doorstep, their faces a storm of tears, rage, and defeat. Mom's eyes were red-rimmed mascara streaking her cheeks. Dad's jaw clenched tight, his usual stoicism cracked. Lila hovered behind, clutching her purse like a shield. They pushed past me without invitation, filling my small living room with their presence, the air thick with the scent of Mom's floral perfume and unspoken accusations. "Ellen, please," Mom gasped, collapsing onto my couch. "You have to make this stop, the church, the neighbors, everything." This was it, the direct face-off I'd both dreaded and prepared for the betrayers at my mercy, begging for the mercy they'd never shown me. Dad stepped forward first, his voice rough with emotion he'd rarely displayed. "Enough, Ellen. Call off the newspaper, the GoFundMe, whatever this is. You're ruining us." His hands trembled as he gestured wildly. "I lost 3 carpentry jobs today. Clients saw the story. We're beggars now because of you." Mom nodded furiously, clutching a crumpled tissue. "The prayer groups disinvited me from Bible study 25 years, and Lila—" "Oh, honey, tell her." They turned to Lila, expectant, but she burst into sobs, collapsing beside Mom. "I was forced into it. Ellen, Greg made me. He said it was just paperwork, that you'd never know I didn't want to hurt you." Her words rang hollow, a rehearsed plea that ignited the fire I'd banked for too long. Forced. After the deed photo, the adoption scheme, I stood tall, my voice steady as I reached for the folder on my coffee table, the one Rebecca had prepared thick with receipts and timelines. "Stop," I said, opening the folder with deliberate slowness. "You don't get to beg without hearing the truth you buried." The room fell silent as I began reading aloud, my voice clear and unyielding, each word a nail in their coffin of lies. Exhibit A, bank transfer, March 15th, 2007. $4,200 from my savings to cover Lila's community college tuition after she failed 3 classes. Mom, you said she's young, she'll find her way. Mom whimpered, but I continued. Exhibit B, September 22nd, 2010, $18,000 for Lila's red convertible, the one she crashed twice. Dad, you called it confidence building. Dad looked away, his shoulders slumping. Exhibit C, February 14th, 2020, $800 monthly repair contribution to 1427 Maple Street, which you transferred to Lila on October 12, 2019, pocketing $48,000 while I thought I was helping family. Lila gasped, feigning shock, but I pressed on. And the lies, Mom, at Thanksgiving 2019? The house is fine, just needs minor fixes. Dad, at Easter 2021. We're protecting our legacy. Legacy for who, not me. I flipped pages, my voice rising with each revelation. Exhibit D. The bank video, Greg forging my signature, you two smiling behind him. Mom, that whisper, make it quick before she notices. Exhibit E. The package note. You were just a financial plan. And Lila holding the deed in that 2019 photo, celebrating while I painted the garage. Their faces crumpled, Mom covering her ears. Dad sinking into a chair. Lila wailing, I didn't know about the adoption. Greg hid it. Lies upon lies, each one I documented meticulously. Exhibit F. Your demand at dinner, $5,000 for the guest room in a house I co-funded. Forced you chose this every step. The room echoed with their sobs, but I felt no pity, only the cathartic release of years silenced. I'd carried their weight. Now they carried the truth. I closed the folder, the snap like a gavel. You've taken everything, my money, my trust, my place in this family. But I've forgiven the girl who wired tuition from diner tips, the daughter who replaced your roof in a storm. I forgive that, Ellen. I paused, meeting each pair of eyes. But I won't forget the betrayal that followed, and I won't return to your world of schemes and favoritism. Mom reached for me, tears streaming. Please, Ellen family. Dad nodded weakly. We'll pay it back. Lila sobbed. Sisters forever. I stepped back, shaking my head. Family isn't what you made it. Goodbye. They rose slowly, shuffling toward the door like ghosts of who they'd been. Mom's hand lingering on the frame. I closed it firmly behind them, the lock clicking with finality. The apartment fell silent, my chest heaving, the confrontation's weight lifting like fog burning off at dawn. It was over. The face-off won. My voice heard their empire of deceit in ruins. I poured a glass of water, sinking onto the couch they'd vacated, the folder heavy in my lap. For the first time, I felt whole, unburdened by their pleas. The public exposure had stripped their power. This meeting sealed it. I thought it was done until my mother came alone. The echo of the locked door still hung in the air from my family's defeated departure, when a soft knock came barely 20 minutes later, tentative and alone. I peered through the peephole, my breath catching at the sight of Mom standing there by herself. Her coat pulled tight against the autumn chill, eyes downcast, no trace of Dad's sternness or Lila's theatrics. Something in her posture, hunched, vulnerable, stirred a flicker of the old instinct to comfort. But I steeled myself and opened the door just wide enough for her to slip inside. She moved like a shadow, settling into the armchair across from me. Without a word, her hands twisting a handkerchief in her lap. The room felt smaller with just us, the weight of unspoken decades pressing down, flipping our roles in a way I'd never imagined. For the first time, I wasn't the daughter seeking approval. She was the one needing absolution, and I held the power to give or withhold it. Mom, I said quietly, sitting opposite her. My voice steady despite the storm inside. What do you want? I said my piece. She looked up, her face a map of wrinkles deepened by regret. Tears carving fresh paths down her cheeks. Ellen, honey, I couldn't leave it like that. Not with you. Her voice trembled, breaking on my name, and she took a shaky breath. I've carried this guilt for so long, favoring Lila always. Every time I excused her mistakes, covered her messes, I knew it hurt you. The college tuition, the car, the parties I let slide while you worked, doubles at that diner. I saw it in your eyes, that quiet pain. But I was afraid, Ellen. Afraid to face what I'd done, to admit I wasn't the mother you deserved. Her confession hung between us, raw and unfiltered, peeling back the saintly facade she'd worn at church. I'd spent years resenting her indulgence of Lila. Now she named it shame, a burden she'd buried under prayer meetings and potlucks. She dabbed her eyes, continuing her words, tumbling faster now as if a dam had broken. And Lila, oh God, forgive me, she manipulated me worse than I ever admitted. After your father and I took her in, she knew my soft spots, my fear of being alone. Mom, if you don't help me, I'll leave, just like Ellen will someday. She'd cry, cling to me, make me feel like without her, I'd have nothing. I let her pull the strings because I dreaded abandonment, dreaded empty nests more than anything. Your father worked so much, and you were strong, Ellen. Always so capable. I told myself you didn't need me like she did. But it was cowardice. Pure cowardice. Her shoulders shook with sobs, the handkerchief soaked through, and I watched, torn between the child who'd craved her fairness and the woman who'd outgrown it. This was the flip me, listening her unraveling, our dynamic inverted like a mirror turned backward. I leaned forward, my heart aching despite everything, the emotional depth of her words carving into old scars. Then choose, Mom. Right now. Me or her. Prove it, tell me the truth you've hidden all these years. She froze, her eyes widening, the room holding its breath. Seconds stretched into eternity, her lips parting as if to speak a lie, then closing, defeated. When she finally whispered, it came like a thunderclap, shattering the last illusion of our family. Lila, she's not your father's daughter. She's mine from an affair, Ellen. 1989, before you were born. A co-worker at the library, a mistake I buried deep. Your dad never knew. We adopted her officially through Aunt Margaret's estate to cover it. That's why I clung to her so fiercely. She was my secret guilt, my redemption. But you've always been stronger, the real daughter who rose above it all. The revelation landed like a physical blow, rewriting my entire childhood in an instant. Lila, my sister by blood alone, the favored one because of Mom's hidden sin. Me, the innocent afterthought raised in the shadow of that lie. Tears streamed down her face, unchecked now, her body folding in on itself. I see it now, you're the strong one, Ellen. Not fragile Lila, not broken Greg. You've built a life without my crutches, exposed our sins when we deserved it. I favored her to ease my conscience, but you've outshone us all. Forgive me, please, I was weak. The depth of her confession pierced me, flipping our bond completely. I the forgiver, she the penitent. Part of me wanted to hold her, to heal the girl who'd lost her mother's even hand. But the stronger part, the woman forged in betrayal, recognized this as closure, not reconciliation. Her guilt was real. Her manipulation admitted the affair unveiled. Lila's hold, born of Mom's fear, explained every lopsided choice, every overlooked hurt. And my strength. It shone now untainted, the daughter who'd survived their web. I stood slowly, the chair scraping softly, my voice gentle but final. I hear you, Mom. I see your pain, your fear, and I forgive the mother who tried, however flawed. She reached for my hand, hope flickering in her eyes, but I stepped back, the emotional chasm too wide to bridge. But understanding doesn't erase the years. You've chosen your truths. I've chosen mine. Her face fell, the handkerchief dropping to her lap as the weight of her revelations settled over us both. This moment, her confession, the dynamic forever flipped, marked the end of my seeking her love. I was whole without it. I turned toward the door, my hand on the knob, the silence between us profound. I walked out of the room silent. For the last time. The door clicked shut behind me with a softness that belied the earthquake of Mom's final confession, leaving me in the cool hallway of my apartment building, my footsteps echoing down to the lobby. Lila's true parentage. Mom's decades of fear-driven favoritism. It all swirled in my mind like debris from a storm finally passed. But instead of collapse, I felt an unexpected lightness, as if shedding the last chain of their expectations had freed me to breathe fully for the first time. I rode the elevator up the mirrored walls, reflecting a woman with clear eyes and squared shoulders, and stepped into my apartment, the space now truly mine alone. The folder of evidence sat untouched on the table, a relic of battles won, but my gaze drifted to the bookshelf in the corner where a small wooden box engraved with memories had gathered dust since my move. Grandma Harper's box. Something pulled me toward it now, a quiet intuition that old love waited there to heal what family had broken. I lifted the lid gently, the scent of lavender sachets and aged paper rising like a warm embrace. Inside lay treasures from my childhood summers at Grandma's farm in the Virginia countryside. Pressed wildflowers from meadow walks, a braided friendship bracelet we'd made by the creek ticket stubs from the county fair, where she'd won me a stuffed bear. But nestled at the bottom, tied with faded ribbon, was a sealed envelope, my name in her looping script, for Ellen when you need her most. My fingers trembled as I untied it, the paper crackling softly. The letter unfolded to reveal her familiar handwriting, steady and wise. My dearest Ellen, if you're reading this, life's taught you a hard lesson about love that doesn't return what you give. Remember, learn to leave when unloved. You are not your giving. You are your becoming. I loved you fiercely, always, your laughter in my kitchen, your questions under the stars. Carry that true love forward. Grandma. Tears welled, not of sorrow, but of reclamation. Her words a balm on wounds still tender from Mom's truths. The letter unlocked a cascade of beautiful memories, vivid as yesterday, reminding me of the true love I'd almost forgotten amid years of familial neglect. I saw us in her sun-dappled kitchen, flour-dusted aprons as we baked apple pies, her laughter booming when I added too much cinnamon. Boldness, my girl. That's your gift. Summers on the porch swing her stories of quilting circles and wartime rations. her hand stroking my hair as fireflies danced. "You're my spark, Ellen," she'd say, "the one who'll light the world." Christmases wrapped in her Afghans, her voice singing Silent Night, off-key but full-hearted while Mom and Dad bickered inside. She saw me, my curiosity, my quiet strength nurturing it without condition, unlike the ledger-keeping love I'd known at home. One memory shone brightest my 8th birthday when Mom forgot the cake in Lila's tantrum chaos. Grandma arrived with a blackberry cobbler, candles flickering, whispering, "Your day, your joy, no one takes that." That unconditional warmth flooded back now, redefining my self-worth not through their validation, but her unwavering belief. I wasn't the financial plan. I was Grandma's spark worthy simply for being. I sat cross-legged on the floor, the letter in my lap, memories weaving a tapestry of pure, untainted love that contrasted sharply with the manipulations I'd uncovered. Grandma had died 7 years ago, her farm sold to pay debts, but her legacy lived in these moments in the way she'd taught me to plant tomatoes with faith in the harvest, to mend a torn dress with patient stitches, to forgive small hurts, but guard my heart from big ones. "Love isn't earned," Ellen, she'd say, tucking me in. "It's chosen daily." She'd chosen me daily, seeing the daughter Mom overlook the sister Lila overshadowed. These recollections washed away the sting of the deed, the forgery, the adoption scheme. My worth wasn't in dollars wired or roofs repaired. It was in the resilient woman Grandma had always seen. The one who baked, boldly questioned stars-lit worlds. For the first time, I felt truly seen, my self-worth rooted not in family duty, but in her enduring, beautiful love. Inspired, a purpose crystallized as the afternoon sun slanted golden through my windows. Grandma had poured love into me. Now I'd pour it forward, transforming pain into legacy. I opened my laptop, the GoFundMe still at $28,000 from the community's support, and started typing the Ellen Harper Scholarship Fund in memory of Grandma Rose. A small initiative, $5,000 annually for young women from Richmond, pursuing finance or business for those who've shouldered family burdens and seek to build their own futures. I'd match the first year's donations personally, naming recipients after her values: boldness, resilience, chosen love. The application would ask not for GPAs, but stories of quiet sacrifices like diner shifts for siblings' dreams, or roofs fixed in storms. As I drafted the mission, to honor the true love that sees you, closure settled over me like Grandma's Afghan. This wasn't vengeance. It was alchemy turning betrayal's gold into opportunity for others. By evening, I'd filed the nonprofit paperwork with Rebecca's help. The scholarship site live first applications pouring in. Women like me, strong, overlooked, would rise because of Grandma's light through me. I folded the letter carefully, placing it beside the wooden box, my heart full and redefined. Grandma's words had evoked the old love I'd nearly lost, rebuilding my worth brick by loving brick. The scholarship was my closure, a bridge from past pain to future grace. And I realized I don't need revenge. I've already won. Grandma's letter rested on my nightstand like a talisman. Her words, "Learn to leave when unloved," echoing through the quiet victory I'd claimed without revenge, the scholarship fund already a beacon of my reclaimed life. But closure demanded one final act, not destruction, but a clear path forward, an irreversible decision that would sever the last threads of obligation. I couldn't rebuild with them hovering in shadows. I needed them to choose healing or fade away. With steady hands, I composed a single email to Mom, Dad, and Lila, CCing Rebecca for record. One last offer. Meet me at my apartment tomorrow, 2 p.m. I'll propose terms for forgiveness. No more games, this ends tomorrow. I hit send, the message a gauntlet thrown my heart calm as Richmond's evening lights flickered on. This was my choice, posed plainly: reconciliation on my terms or permanent goodbye. The next afternoon arrived crisp and golden autumn leaves swirling outside my window as I arranged 3 chairs in a semicircle facing mine, a pitcher of iced tea on the coffee table, a nod to civility. Not warmth. At 2:05, the buzzer sounded and they filed in. Mom, first eyes hopeful. Dad, behind face unreadable. Lila, last, arms crossed defiantly. They sat without greeting, the air thick with anticipation. My living room transformed into a courtroom of family reckoning. I stood tall, folder in hand, not the evidence won, but a fresh agreement drafted with Rebecca. Thank you for coming. I began, my voice even commanding the space as never before. I've won my freedom from your betrayals. But forgiveness. That's my gift to give if you earn it. Here's my offer, clear and final. I slid copies across the table, watching their eyes scan the 2 simple conditions. First, I said, meeting each gaze, 6 months of family therapy with Dr. Elaine Carter, a specialist in sibling dynamics and parental favoritism. Weekly sessions, all 4 of us starting next Tuesday. No excuses, no skipping. Mom nodded eagerly. Dad grunted non-committally. Lila shifted uncomfortably. Second and non-negotiable, a public apology. A joint letter to the Richmond Times-Dispatch published in full. We, Robert, Diane, and Lila Harper, deeply regret defrauding and betraying our daughter and sister Ellen. We acknowledge her sacrifices our lies and commit to change. Plus a video statement on the church website read by each of you. The room tensed. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom's hands clasped tight. Lila's eyes flashed. Meet these, and I forgive. We heal as equals. Refuse, and this is goodbye forever. No calls, no visits, no emergencies. Choose now. Lila erupted first, slamming her copy down, her voice shrill. Therapy, public humiliation. No way, Ellen, I'm not airing our dirty laundry for your GoFundMe fans. You got your revenge, leave us alone. Her refusal cut sharp, but I felt no surprise. It was the Lila who'd always chosen self over sister. Dad remained silent, staring at the floor. His folded hands unmoving, a statue of inaction that spoke volumes, his pattern since childhood, letting Mom and Lila lead while I cleaned up. Minutes ticked by in heavy quiet. His refusal, implicit, a void louder than words. Mom hesitated longest, torn between us. Her eyes darting from Lila's glare to my steady resolve. Ellen, honey, therapy sounds good, but the church would never forgive. Wait, no, we'd be asking their forgiveness. She trailed off, glancing at Dad's stone face, then Lila's scowl. Her hesitation crumbling into defeat. I can't. Not if they won't. The choice was made, unanimous rejection, their unity in denial sealing our fates. I nodded once, the irreversible decision crystallizing like ice. Understood. You've chosen. My voice held no anger, only finality, as I gathered the papers, stacking them neatly. Effective immediately, I withdraw all support. No more wires, no emergency funds, no holidays. The house deed suit proceeds. Rebecca files Monday for full restitution of $75,000 plus interest. And personally, I pulled out my phone, opening contacts, their names glowing on screen. One by one, I deleted Dad first, the number vanishing with a soft swipe. Lila next, her texts erased forever. Mom last, the final tap echoing in the silence. You're gone from my life. Completely. Mom gasped, reaching out, but I stepped back, unyielding. This isn't punishment, it's protection. For me. Dad rose first, silent as ever, shuffling to the door. Lila stormed after, muttering, selfish, under her breath. Mom lingered, tears falling. Ellen, please reconsider. I shook my head gently. The choice was yours, Mom. Goodbye. The door closed behind them for the last time, the locks click, a symphony's end. I sank into my chair, the apartment expanding with emptiness turned freedom. Deleting those contacts wasn't loss. It was liberation, a digital Berlin Wall crumbling. No more midnight calls for bailouts. No guilt over ignored texts. The scholarship fund would thrive without their shadow. My career, my peace, my future all mine alone. I poured iced tea, the glass cool in my hands, and toasted silently to the woman who'd posed the ultimatum and walked away stronger. Their refusal clarified everything therapy demanded: vulnerability. They lacked the apology accountability they'd dodged. My irreversible decision wasn't abandonment. It was self-preservation, the final choice affirming my worth beyond their grasp. As twilight painted my walls lavender, I scrolled the scholarship applications, 10 new ones, stories mirroring mine, and smiled, the weight fully lifted. One person still came to see me after, but not who I expected. The chime of my doorbell pulled me from the scholarship applications glowing on my laptop screen. Each story a quiet triumph mirroring the freedom I'd claimed just moments ago by deleting the last digital tether to my past. I expected Sarah, my college friend, who'd become my rock, bringing takeout for our weekly catch-up, but through the peephole stood a courier in crisp uniform holding a single cream envelope, addressed in Mom's familiar cursive. My heart skipped, not with dread, but mild curiosity as I signed for it, the paper light as a feather in my hands. That was a year ago, the final echo of the family I'd released. And now, as October sunlight filters through the oak leaves of my new garden in Charlottesville, I hold that same letter again, its words unchanged. Are you okay? No apology, no please, just 5 simple words in blue ink postmarked from Richmond. I smile softly, folding it neatly, and step outside the ending of my old life, complete, my liberation blooming all around me. 1 year later, Charlottesville wraps me like a gentle embrace, this college town, 50 miles west of the drama that once defined me. Now, my chosen home, its brick sidewalks and mountain views, a daily reminder of fresh starts. I traded my corporate financial analyst role for something truer to my heart: director of the Rose Harper Scholarship Foundation, housed in a cozy office above a bookstore on the downtown mall. My days overflow with purpose, interviewing applicants over coffee, matching bold young women with mentors, watching their eyes light up when I say, "You're our next Rose." The fund has grown to $150,000 annually, 20 recipients last spring, alone, each carrying Grandma's spark forward. My apartment. A sunlit cottage with a white picket fence, pots of black-eyed Susans nodding in the breeze, a far cry from Richmond's tense shadows. Real friends fill it now. Sarah visits weekly, bringing her infectious laugh. There's Marta, the bookstore owner who trades poetry for pie. And Lena, a scholarship alum turned my assistant, her gratitude a daily gift. Book club Tuesdays. Farmers market Sundays, porch, wine with neighbors. These are my people, chosen not by blood but by shared light. Family. No contact, a silence I've cultivated like a well-tended garden, not out of hate but peaceful remembering. I don't seethe over the forgery or the deed. Those are history lessons, not open wounds. Mom's letter arrived 2 weeks after my final choice, the only communication since forwarded by Rebecca when I updated my address. I picture them sometimes not with bitterness, but detached clarity: Dad in his workshop, hands idle without jobs. Lila packing boxes. Mom at an empty kitchen table. Recent whispers from mutual church friends confirm their full collapse. Lila divorced Greg last March, the ethics scandal leaving him penniless. Their perfect marriage shattered in court over his debts. She moved to Norfolk, waitressing at a diner, ironic echo of my own past. Rumors say she's expecting a loan. Mom and Dad rattle around the Maple Street house, now Lila's by deed, but mortgaged to pay my restitution judgment, $92,000 with interest wired directly to my foundation last June. Dad's carpentry clients never returned. Mom's prayer group became awkward nods. They're alone, their choices natural harvest. And I hold no malice, just a quiet nod to karma's gentle hand. Remembering keeps me grateful, not resentful. Their void highlights my abundance. The garden path crunches under my slippers as I tuck Mom's letter into my apron pocket, breathing in the scent of turned earth and late roses. This plot, my first real one, is my sanctuary. Raised beds of heirloom tomatoes like Grandma's, a herb spiral for Lena's teas, a stone bench where I journal at dusk. Today I kneel by the lettuce fingers, sifting soil, the sun warming my back as birdsong fills the air. The letter's question, "Are you okay?" hangs like a soft echo. And oh, I am. More than okay. My chosen job fulfills me. My real friends fill my laughter. This town with its autumn festivals and starlit trails heals me daily. The scholarship's impact ripples yesterday's email from recipient Clara. Your fund let me escape my family's expectations. I'm the first to college. Tears pricked then as now Grandma's love multiplied through me. I don't hate them. I remember their lessons in reverse, what not to be, how to choose better. Mom's simple question, devoid of apology, was her last frail reach, and my smile today answers it fully. A cardinal flits to the fence, its red breast vivid against the green, and I rise, brushing dirt from my hands. The folded letter, a talisman of closure. The family's collapse. Lila's divorce papers public record. Mom and Dad's utilities nearly cut off before church aid stepped in. Feels distant like a novel's sad epilogue. They're alone in their choices' wake while I've built a constellation of new stars. Dinner tonight with Sarah and Marta lasagna. Wine stories of our wins. Tomorrow, scholarship interviews. Life unfolds gently, memorably each day. A petal of the bloom I planted that night, I froze the accounts. I pause at the garden's edge, turning back to survey my haven vegetables. Thriving flowers nodding, the cottage glowing in sunset. Mom's words dissolve into peace. I am not just okay, I am radiant, whole, liberated. They never called again, and I no longer waited. The air was thick with tension at our family dinner table, a rare gathering that felt more like a battlefield than a homecoming. For years, I'd been the dutiful daughter funneling money to my parents to keep their lives afloat, college fees for my sister, car payments, even their mortgage. But that night, as my sister and her shady husband smirked across the table, my parents dropped a bombshell. If you want to stay in the guest room, it's $5,000 a month now. The guest room. In the house I'd practically paid for. The betrayal stung deeper than the demand their favoritism toward my sister laid bare. I forced a smile, nodded, and said nothing, but rage simmered beneath. That night I logged into the bank's website, my fingers trembling as I requested a freeze on every account tied to me, including the joint ones with my parents. I packed my bags in silence, left a note on the kitchen counter. This is the last time I pay, and slipped out into the dark. I thought I'd cut them off for good. A week of eerie silence passed until my phone lit up with 110 missed calls from my mother. Her voicemails a chaotic spiral of panic accusations and pleas. "You can't do this to us," she screamed. But I wasn't done. What I uncovered next about my sister's husband, my parents' lies, and a secret they'd buried for years would unravel their world and set me free. My name is Ellen Harper, 38 years old, a financial analyst with a steady career in Richmond, Virginia. For years, I've been the backbone of my family, wiring money to my parents for their bills, my sister's education, even their home repairs, all while building my own life alone. Independence was my badge, but it came with a price I never spoke aloud until that night changed everything. The dining room smelled of roasted chicken and resentment, the kind that lingers in a family stretched thin by unspoken grudges. My parents' modest colonial home, tucked in a quiet Richmond suburb, hadn't changed much since my childhood. Same faded floral curtains, same creaky oak table where we now sat. My mother Diane, 62, fussed over the mashed potatoes, her hands trembling slightly, not from age but from the weight of whatever she was about to say. My father Robert, 65, sat at the head, his weathered face stern, sipping his iced tea with deliberate slowness. Across from me was my younger sister Lila, 32. Her new husband Greg, glued to her side. Their arrival a month ago had shifted the house's rhythm, their laughter and whispers filling spaces I'd once called mine. I'd driven down from my apartment for this rare family dinner expecting warmth, but finding a chill I couldn't name. The meal started innocently enough. Mom passed the green beans, her eyes darting to Dad, who cleared his throat. "Ellen, we need to talk about arrangements," he said, his voice low like he was delivering a verdict. I set down my fork, the clink loud in the sudden silence. Lila's gaze flicked to Greg, who smirked faintly, his arm draped over her chair. "What arrangements?" I asked, though my stomach already knotted, sensing the ambush. Dad leaned forward, his hands clasped. "With Lila and Greg moving in, space is tight. The guest room, you know where you stay when you visit, it's not free anymore." He paused, letting the words settle like dust. "If you want to keep using it, it'll be $5,000 a month." The number hit like a slap. $5,000. For a room in the house I'd poured thousands into over the years, mortgage payments when Dad's carpentry jobs dried up, Lila's college tuition when she flunked out of her first semester, even the new roof after that brutal storm in 19. I stared at him, waiting for a punchline that never came. Mom's voice broke the silence, thin and nervous. "It's only fair, Ellen. Lila and Greg are starting their life and we need to support them. You've got your job, your place, you're doing fine." Her words twisted the knife. Fine. I'd been more than fine for them, wiring money month after month, never asking for thanks, never expecting this. Lila said nothing. Her eyes fixed on her plate, but Greg's smirk widened like he'd won some game I didn't know we were playing. 5,000. I repeated, my voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. "For the guest room." Dad nodded, unyielding. "It's a family home, Ellen, but times are tough. You want to stay? You contribute." Contribute. The word burned. I'd contributed more than anyone at this table. Yet here I was, reduced to a tenant in my own family's story. The room felt smaller, the air thick with old wounds cracking open. I remembered the summers I worked double shifts to cover Lila's car payments while she partied the Christmases I spent alone in my apartment so Mom could fuss over Lila's latest drama. They'd always chosen her, the baby, the fragile one, the one who could do no wrong. I'd swallowed it, told myself it was duty love. But this was a line drawn in the sand, and I was on the wrong side. I looked at Lila, hoping for a flicker of guilt, but she avoided my gaze, her fingers twirling a lock of hair. Greg leaned closer to her, whispering something that made her lips twitch. My parents exchanged a glance, a silent agreement I wasn't privy to. The favoritism wasn't new, but its brazenness tonight felt like a betrayal carved in stone. They weren't just asking for money, they were pushing me out, making room for Lila's new life while erasing mine. I could have argued, listed every dollar I'd given them, every sacrifice. But the words caught in my throat, drowned by a realization they didn't see me as family anymore, only a resource. The thought was a cold blade cutting through years of loyalty. I pushed my chair back, the scrape loud in the tense quiet. "I'll think about it," I said, my voice calm, betraying none of the storm inside. Mom's face softened, mistaking my restraint for compliance. "Good, Ellen. We just want what's best for everyone." Dad grunted, returning to his chicken. Lila finally looked up, her eyes unreadable, while Greg's smirk lingered like a challenge. I forced a smile, my mind racing, calculating. They thought they'd cornered me, but they'd misjudged. I wasn't the obedient daughter anymore. As we cleared the plates, their chatter resumed, Lila's new job, Greg's, business plans, like nothing had happened. But something had shifted in me, a switch flipped. I excused myself, claiming a headache, and retreated to the guest room. Alone, I sat on the narrow bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper I'd paid to replace. $5,000. For a room. For a family that didn't want me. The anger hardened into resolve. They'd drawn the battle lines, but I wasn't going to fight on their terms. I nodded, smiled to myself, and began planning my exit from their lives. The guest room door clicked shut behind me, sealing out the hum of my family's voices from the dining room below. My forced smile from dinner had faded, replaced by a cold clarity that pulsed through me like a second heartbeat. My parents' demand $5,000 a month for a room in a house I'd helped pay for echoed in my mind, each word a fresh cut. I stood in the dim light, the familiar walls of my childhood closing in, and knew I couldn't stay. Not under their terms. Not anymore. I sank onto the bed, its springs creaking under my weight, and pulled my laptop from my bag. My fingers moved with purpose, logging into my bank's online portal. The screen glowed, casting shadows across the room's faded wallpaper. My account's savings checking, and the joint ones I'd set up with Mom and Dad years ago to help manage their bills, stared back at me. Those joint accounts,